7% of Mongolian economy. Since the transition from socialism, the Mongolian economy has changed dramatically over the past 20 years, both politically and socially. For 300 years before its transition to socialism in the early 20s, Mongolia had been one of the most backward countries in the world. Mongolia had an early feudal, natural economy with a communist regime in its most rigid and most intolerant form. This reign of totalitarianism with its economic analog, central planning, lasted for the lifetime of the 3 generations. And this could not but leave deep imprints in every sphere of our society. But these extremes of isolation and repression have only heightened the determination of Mongolia for change. Therefore, during the past 20 years, following the transition from socialism to democracy, Mongolia was able to establish a multi-party political system, conducted 6 consecutive parliamentary elections in parallel with the inauguration of presidency, and has formed a parliament in its true meaning. It's very rare that a country has been isolated as Mongolia, not only from the seas, but also from all major international routes. Our only immediate neighbors are, as I'm trying to show there, neighbors are Russia in the north and China in the south, the 2 powers with the greatest physical parameters in the world. As a member of the WTO and as a trading partnering with the other countries of the region and beyond, trading logistics is carried out only through the lens of our 2 neighbors and mainly via railway system, because we don't have any other access to the international markets. During the past 20 years, conferences about Mongolia were based on the transition of our country from communism to democracy and discussing general macroeconomic reforms such as privatization, maybe institutional reforms, legal reforms, political transitions, and maybe sometimes some cultural and just general ethnographic aspects of our country. Today's topic on Mongolia have become more rich and diversified and have allowed us to tackle more specific and sensitive issues concerning our economy, maybe everyday's political life. Every country has its own plan of development and ways of economic progress. The methodologies of development are based on the country's historical background, its land and climate condition, its culture and tradition. During the past 20 years, based on the above characteristics of our nation and its economy, Mongolia has achieved and developed its short and long-term objectives several times and strategies for its economic growth. I would like to formulate some of the objectives of our country has established in relation to foreign investment and the mining sector of Mongolia. There are, first, mineral exploration and mining. Use of large-scale mineral deposits for export to generate profit and, in the long run, explore and uncover new mineral deposits. Export finished products overseas rather than raw goods for more value-added revenues. Secondly, energy sector. We're in serious shortage of safe and secure domestic source of power necessary to carry out all the planned mining activities and further processing of the extracted minerals. All the major mineral deposits are located in the rural areas where new power sources and water supplies will have to be developed. Despite the way, even today we are 100% depending on Russian import of oil products, gasoline, fuel, and everything else. Third, infrastructure and supply chain development. Additional support networks are required to sustain a secure supply chain. Extensive development of railway route, highway networks, and bridges are crucial for us. The supply chain networks must have access to the neighboring countries, Russia and China, and main export ports. Unfortunately, most of our raw materials cannot be exported via air transportation particularly. Maybe sometimes except gold and other very rare and very high valued products. Fourth, human capital. To develop each sector, we need an educated and knowledgeable workforce. This requires internationally qualified education system that facilitates specific fields of study, such as vocational degrees, water supply, in sector of water supply, engineering, and others. Plus, government management is required on all levels of this education system. Unfortunately, today's situation is almost 3/4 of all our students are students in the humanitarian sectors. Journalism, legal system, maybe economics, etc. Unfortunately, in the sector of the real economy, we are still facing very big shortage of the internationally accepted, high educated people. Implementation of the above goals depends on certain factors. Therefore, let me give a brief details on some of the most influential factors in implementing the above mentioned objectives. First of all, the geopolitical factors. In terms of multinational company competition, there are always supporting governments' interests behind these companies, and no country is an exception to this matter. Russia and China, our direct neighboring countries' interests, are more feasible and direct in regards to Mongolia, while other third countries, particularly Korea, Japan, US, maybe Australia, are more indirect and sometimes even invisible. About Chinese interests here. It is the interest of China to secure as much raw material sources as possible, whether it is in Mongolia, Nigeria, or in Chile. But more closely, Mongolia is obviously a much closer target for China. So it is understandable that Chinese would like to see Mongolia develop its infrastructure. Due to the clear demand for raw materials in China for the next few decades, it will desire everything that Mongolia can produce, whether the products are raw, processed, or value added in some cases. Russia has been a Mongolian traditional partner for many years, both politically and economically. It has recently joined the APEC, as a Pacific Economic Council, since they would like to develop their resources in the regions where they are located, Far East, Siberia, etc. Russian economy is based also on raw material exports. We have many similarities in this field with Russia. Therefore, recently Russia is becoming a competitor to Mongolia, since both countries will be producing the same products, raw materials, in the next few decades also. For instance, once Tavun Tolg'e and Oyu Tolg'e starts products and initiates its supply to China, the future economics of Russian projects may start becoming less attractive than before. Hence, there are hidden influences and perhaps interests by the Russians to delay and progress in relation to production in the mining sector of Mongolia. About the interests of the third countries. Indirect influences on Mongolia by particularly Japanese, Korean, American, maybe and even Australian governments are largely driven by the interconnected interests between the parties involved and how the outcomes may affect Mongolia and the other parties. Therefore, implementation of any large projects will be wrapped in various interests, sometimes powerful, of the countries involved. So let us not be naive to assume that end of the Cold War means the end of competition among the powerful countries. I would like to say certain words about the global economic conditions also. The chain reaction caused by the economic recession in the United States, European Union, and the slowdown in Chinese economic growth is still having lingering and very real effects on the global economy. This is no exception to Mongolia as well. Cyclical nature of the global economy has taken effect also. East Asia and Pacific region has also been hit hard, but the global recession and despite the environments and progresses, we are still far from the highs we saw in 2008. China is mentioned, had undergone a rapid decrease in its economic growth, and since they are Mongolia's biggest consumer of raw materials and main revenue generator through mineral exports, we are seeing the effects on this recession in Mongolia as well. Due to our small-sized economy and high dependence on global commodity fluctuations, we are left at the mercy of this large shift around the world. Therefore, any large foreign company operating in Mongolia should take this matter into consideration. I'm sure Australia is very well informed about this different aspect of these problems, and so I will not dwell upon this topic too much. Our domestic situation. Mongolia is a country that is still going through a post-transition period from socialism. We have never had experience in implementing a globally significant projects in Mongolia since recently. Some maybe mention Erdenet, the first and largest copper plant in Mongolia, established in early 1978. But the company was developed under full supervision and control of the Russians during the communist time. Second is Ulaanbaatar Railway Company. It was also a major project in Mongolia, but was also under the strict control of the Soviet Union. The company was established in 1949. Just a few years ago, this company celebrates 60 years anniversary. Now it is 62, 63 years anniversary. Therefore, Mongolia had no say in the decision-making processes and had no gain from the revenue allocating as the project was implemented right after World War II. Moreover, Erdenet is a very opaque company with a very specific and non-common interconnectedness with the global markets, its practices and experience. More recently, Oyu Tolgoi and Tavun Tolgoi, the two largest copper and coal mining sites respectively, have become one of the biggest projects we have had to tackle during the course of the last few years. Hence, the general public is having strong reaction to this project. As such, undertaking concerning critical mineral deposits such as gold, copper, iron, coal, and rare earth attracted a great deal of international and geopolitical interest in Mongolia. This is why Mongolian public is facing an undefined issue on whether natural exploitation under foreign investment is as beneficial for Mongolians as it is to the foreign investors. Secondly, Mongolia is one of the few post-communist countries that is attempting to implement multiple economic, political, and social reforms. Hence, very often the government has a very poor